Okay. So the first question we have for you, Maura, is how did you decide law school was for you, and did you always know you wanted to become an attorney when you grew up?
So I definitely kind of always knew, but I don't think that I really knew what being a lawyer was. I'm definitely, and I say this shamelessly, but like I definitely wanted to become a lawyer because of Legally Blonde. And I think that's a totally acceptable thing to say. I mean, obviously she combines like femininity with being in like a high power career. So it's pretty like awe inspiring. But I didn't really know like what law was, but I think that like as I got older, obviously I like saw that my interests, like, in like foreign affairs, political science, history, philosophy, like law is kind of at the cornerstone of all that. So even if I wasn't sure like exactly what a lawyer did, like I felt like I was going on the right path. And then I had the opportunity to do some legal research, and that kind of just reaffirmed it for me. And I don't think that like law school is really what anyone expects. Like I don't think anyone is going and being like, I just want to read cases from the 1800s all day. So I think like if you have a passion for law and you kind of know an area that you're interested in and you think that like you'd like to practice law there, I feel like that's a good step. Because like law school is really just like the stepping stone to get you later in your career. So it's hard to base like my expectations on what's actually happening in practice in school now. So yeah, kind of always knew, kind of found out along the way.
Thank you very much for your answer. And the second question we have is, what advice would you share with our undergraduate buddy who aspires to attend law school?
So obviously, like the key answer is just get your GPA as high as you can, keep it up, and figure out what the best route for studying for the LSAT is for you, because those are going to be the key components of your application that admissions officers are going to consider. I self-studied for the LSAT. I know other people that took classes. I mean, I don't know if like the classes would have helped me, but I kind of was just like reading the books along the way and taking practice exams, and then you get into a groove and you find what works for you. But definitely like take your diagnostic, figure that out early on. And then I don't think either way is the right way. Like obviously high scores happen on either studying path. So it's really just like whether you can like sit down and force yourself to study, or whether you like to have like someone else there watching you to make sure you do. And then also, I would say to kind of start thinking about what you'd like to do in law, you in no way have to know. Like even now, I'm like, oh, like maybe I would want to try something else. And then also kind of think about too where you'd like to be and where do you like to practice, because I think those are the two main things that you're going to want to consider when applying to law school. Obviously, your schools are going to be able to connect you anywhere you want to go. Like if you want to practice in a different state and you end up in California, like there's going to be the people in the career service office who are going to like work really hard to make that happen for you. But the reality is too that it's just so much easier where you are. Like obviously in LA, there's a huge legal market, and then there's also just a huge network of alumni that are in the Los Angeles area that almost all of them probably went to like UCLA and USC. So, when you're walking in the door already that your interviewer is probably going to be at the school that you went to. And there's something more comfortable about that. And you know that you could reach out to anyone and be like, I saw you worked at this firm, and it's not as much of a stretch. So yeah, I would think about like where you want to be in the future, and then make sure you're setting yourself up as like a prime candidate for the law school that you're considering.
I think all of that, all of those like components are very important. And I know that's something that you mentioned is a part of like the application. You said focus on your GPA. Something else that we heard is that our recommendation letters are very important. And we were wondering, what is your advice in networking with professors and securing recommendation letters?
Yes. So this was definitely something I was so scared about because, like UCLA, I went to like a large state school. And so some of my classes were, 100 people in it. And even if I did well, I was like, well, even if I reach out, like the professor might not know me. So there's like the key things you can do. Like you can go to office hours, you can do your best to make sure that like the professor has like some facial recognition to your name. But the reality is though that they have so many students that like even if you're in office hours every single week, like they might not know. So I think the best way is when you email them, and especially you could be reaching out, like 2 years later too. You have to take that into consideration. Email them and make sure you let them know like that you loved their class, what semester you took it in, like like what year it was, what class it was, and stuff like that information, because then they don't have to feel bad about being like, who are you? And in reality, they're probably going to pull up your grades, pull up any papers you wrote. It's really, really helpful to send along your resume and your personal statement in the email, even if they don't ask for it, because then like they kind of see a window into what you're going for when you're putting forth your application, especially with the personal statement. And they can kind of like string along pieces from your personal statement into your recommendation letter to make your whole application like holistically connect. And then also like with the resume, they can say like, oh, they took my class because they're passionate about these other things as well. And like they learned in this class and they implement it into an internship later on. But really you just want to give them all the information, because they're probably going to say yes, and they're probably going to write the letter anyways. And of course it's going to help if you did really well in their class and they can say like, and they wrote one of the best papers I've ever seen. But really, if you give them all the information, like the letter is going to come together on its own, and you're going to be happy that even though you weren't like best friends with your professor, I mean, maybe you are, and that's the best case scenario, but they can write a really personal and like thoughtful recommendation rather than just kind of throwing in your grades and then a generic letter along with it.
So I think you mentioned earlier that law schools provide a lot of resources for networking. What advice would you give in terms of looking for internships and getting involved in and off campus?
So definitely something that I really got hung up on in undergrad and before was I always thought that like everything has to tie back to law, but everything does not have to tie back to law. It's really good to do what you're passionate about and what you could really convey in a personal statement or interview, because and you might even gain more from working in a different type of field than working in just legal offices, because like law isn't just working in an office. You're going to want to have interest areas outside of the law that you can put into practice, and maybe it'll help you determine the type of law that you want to do. I have some friends who worked in tech in undergrad and now they're going into like tech with law. So it looks good to see on a resume that you have diverse experience and that can like be put forth later on. And also too, like it doesn't matter. Like it's good that you're working and it looks good that you have experience. So you might as well show what you like to do. And I remember orientation this past year, like they read off like kind of all the interesting things that my classmates have done, like all 200 of us. And like none of them were legal related. Like people were like involved in sports teams. There was actors, like they all had diverse interests. And like, that's what made the class whole, is because we're all coming from like different perspectives. So I think it's definitely good to work, but I wouldn't get too hung up on the type of work, because I mean, if you're just a secretary in an office, like that might not translate as excitedly as if you're doing something that you're interested in. Also, like money is money, and the school is going to understand that. Like if you need to work a service job because you are paying your way through education, I don't think that is any less beneficial than having some prestigious unpaid internship, because customer service probably teaches you just as much as you gain from that internship, and it gives you people skills. And I think it's all about how you market all of it. So it's good to have a combination of both. And I know that like I spoke with people when I was drafting my resume, and I didn't want to put like that I was a barista and a waitress. And they were like, why wouldn't you include that? Like, it doesn't have to just be like prestige. It's also like you have people skills and you worked quickly and you adapted in this environment. I would say it's all about the soft skills that you learn as well as the hard skills.
I think when you mentioned about how we don't always have to do things that are in the legal career, and sometimes getting a job and working on things is very important as well. And I know that's one of the reasons people take gap year. And as someone who went straight from undergrad to law school, do you recommend that path for people, or do you think that a gap year is important? Are you happy with your choice? What are your feelings about like a gap year?
So I'm definitely happy about my choice, but I think it's a very like personal choice, because there's so many things that are going to go into consideration when you decide if you want to take time off. And I know that like obviously like financial situation is probably like a big one for people. They want to have money saved, because like even just like moving somewhere to go to law school and paying rent and everything, like those are large expenses. And so I graduated a semester early, and so that's kind of how I justified it. I was like, oh, I have 8 months to like make as much money as possible and get ready to move to California, and then everything will be fine after that. And my logic too was like, I don't know how much I'll gain from putting this off. I know already that I want to go to school, and I know that I want to go to law school, and I'm ready to be back. And like, I love also being in school. So I kind of, I was like, I don't want to work. But so I kind of just wanted to go back into it. And I kind of saw it as like, if I know this is where I want to end up, and I know this is my plan all along, like every year I hold off doing something else is like a year later that I'll be starting in the field and like starting on the pay and like working my way up at a firm or at any kind of job. So that was my kind of thought process, but I think it's different for everyone. And I know a lot of people too, like finish undergrad and they're exhausted and they're like, I don't want to go back to school. Like I need some time off. And I think that's a big factor as well. And some people want work experience to make their like resume a lot stronger. And I think that is very helpful for some people. I have a classmate who's a paralegal for like 5 years before he came to law school. And he knows his stuff. Like, I gotta say, like, sometimes I'm like, I really should have considered that, because there's some classes that if you just do the work, even at a paralegal level, like, you know, the procedure of it all. So I think there's benefits either way. But I just personally was like, I might as well just go right ahead.
So talking about your experience in law school, I think a lot of movies and TV shows really romanticize law school, such as Legally Blonde, and a lot of people go to law school and then it's not as they imagined. Is attending law school what you imagined it would be? And what do you think of the school environment in general, including professors, resources, workload, and competitiveness among students?
So the most accurate part of Legally Blonde is like that one montage where she's like hustling and is like constantly doing work and like reading on the elliptical and stuff. Like that's kind of what it's like, because there's like a never ending amount of work to do. Like you kind of just always have something next on your to-do list, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing. But it's definitely romanticized. I see a lot, but I also knew it was going to be hard work. And I knew that like at times, like it wasn't always going to be interesting. And that's like how it is for everyone. I think there's always going to be cases that come up in your readings that you're just like, who cares? Like, why is this relevant? But then you talk about it in class and you understand like the main takeaway from it. So then it's kind of worth it. I think I really expected it to be more competitive. That was like a serious fear of mine going in, because I had like, I'm all in the Reddit. Like I was constantly on Reddit when I was applying, and I was reading about like other people's law schools experiences and like horror stories and everything. And I think that like a lot of schools, like they like people are kind of like rooting against you because you're graded on a curve. So like the worse you do, potentially the better they do. And that's the mindset. But USC is like really not like that. We're split up into, so the class is like divided into 3 sections. So you're already with a smaller group of people and you take all of your classes with the same group of people. So you already have like a familiar group, and we have like a Discord, and like we talk in it during class and everything. And any questions you have, like someone is there to help you out. And like I've been on phone calls with people like that I hardly even know, but they just get added to the call. So we like work through like a problem on our writing assignment or something like that. So it's not as competitive as I thought. It's very collegial and very supportive. And it's also kind of fun too. Like I really expected law school to just be like head down, kind of like miserable 3 years while you're just like pushing through the work. But everyone is super friendly. Everyone has such like cool backstories if they're like characters, but they all like have done such different things. Like the age range is like, I think the youngest in my class was 20 and the oldest was 41. So it's like a wide range of people. And yeah, and then we have like social events as well. And then the coursework, like it's bad, but it's not horrible. Like once you get into the flow of it all, it kind of just like you get used to it. The first semester was rough because you're doing everything for the first time, but now I'm like, just gotta power through, and then I can give myself a break. And you do have free time because you can like force yourself to take it. Like I said before, like there's always a to-do list of things to do, but it's not like you can't stop on the to-do list and say that's it for the day. And I think that's probably like the best part, is that you can still balance it all. And if you like today, I'm going to do nothing, like I'm taking the night off, and you can totally do that. So it's what I expected, in the way that it's like a lot of just like put your head down work, but then I like didn't expect that I'd have as like much time to like come up for air and relax. And I love relaxing, so it's really nice.
I think we all can relate that relaxing is definitely important in practicing self-care. And kind of just circling back to, I remember you said earlier in this meeting that it's kind of important to go into law school knowing what field you're semi-interested in. With that being said, did you know what field of law you wanted to practice in before attending law school? If not, are there any resources in place to help you narrow down a specific field of interest?
Yes. So it's a good prerequisite to know where you want to go, because it makes like everything happens so fast. Like the first semester, you're like just trying to stay alive and trying to do everything for the first time. Like you don't understand how exams are and everything. And then after winter break, like you're already applying for jobs. So it's kind of nice to have an idea that like, I'm interested in this area of law, or I'm interested in this. But the good thing is that like you're not stuck once you decide. Your first job in the summer, it isn't really important. Like you just want to do something in the legal realm. And then like obviously your second year becomes more important, because you're probably going to get a return offer to that firm. So then by then you kind of want to know. But I knew, which I'm starting to doubt myself a little, which is fine, but I knew that I preferred the like transactional side of law, and like doing kind of like behind the scenes like contract work over litigation. I don't know if this is still the case, but like before I went to law school, like it was my goal to like never be inside a courtroom. Like I don't really want to be like actually litigating cases. I kind of would just prefer to be doing like actually just basic contracts and like mergers and acquisitions or something like that. And so that was my idea. But then I was like, oh, like maybe I'll consider it. Like maybe I would do a litigation internship this summer and then see, if I had a passion for it. But again, like you kind of have time to decide. And then also more importantly is that like a lot of people have no clue, or they have some clue, but they don't know how to even proceed in that field, or like if you have to like have any, like I know for like intellectual property law, they like you to have a science background. And so our career services is incredible. And I think this is the case at most ABA law schools. There's like a start date of when the career services is allowed to meet with you. So then they like sit you down, and every student has like an introductory meeting. And so you kind of talk about like what regions you want to go to, what kind of law are you interested in, and like what summer jobs would you think about doing, whether it's like you want to work at a firm, you want to work at a company, you want to do a clerkship with a judge, that sort of thing. And then they help you along the way. I actually had one today, which this is a really good example. She tore through my resume for like a whole hour, and I just sat there smiling. Like we said probably 5 words to each other, but it was really helpful. And now I don't have to worry about it. So like their job is to get you a job and to make sure you get a job that you're going to like want to be at and stay at and everything, because they have to publish their employment statistics every year for you all who are applying to their schools to see. So if you don't know what you want to do and you don't have a job, like they're going to work overtime to make sure that you're employed and you're somewhere where you're actually going to like sign the commitment letter and go to. So I think that's like the best resource. And also everyone there is so nice. Like they're so friendly, and they take so much time to work with you that like, I don't know. I don't know if I would have went to career services in undergrad, but like law school, it's a must.
The resources that USC Law School provides sound really helpful. And I think it is great that they work with the student like individually to find jobs for them, and and they're working on their resumes too. It's like, it sounds really great. So kind of circling back, as I mentioned, a lot of people don't imagine what law school really is. And so what is one thing you wish you knew in undergraduate school that would have helped you in law school?
That's a tough one. I think really, like, I think I would have been less nervous. Like, I think that was my main like, I wish someone could have just been like, it'll be fine, like, stop being a maniac. Because I think that's the one problem with, like, right when you get to law school, is that like probably 50% of the stress is like your own issue, and it's not warranted, and it makes everything else seem like more grave, and like everything else is more work because you're making it more work. And exams were so stressful, and then I finished it and I was like, that was like all me. Like, I had a little bit of stress was good, but too much. So I think to go in and like you think that everyone is a genius, like in your first couple months, you're like, everyone here is so smart, like I'm never going to be this smart, like how do they all know this, like have they been here for months before I got here and no one told me, kind of deal. But really, like, everyone's in the same place as you, and it's good to like, it's so good to talk to everyone else too, like not too much. You don't want to do everything that everyone else is doing because you can't possibly use everyone else's studying methods, but like just to hear that like they're in the same boat as you, like they're reviewing the same things, like what they're doing to study, like maybe it's something you didn't think about doing, like talking to people is really good. And then also like this one is like tough, but like get in the habit of reading. Like undergrad, I think it's easy to kind of like skate around reading sometimes. You don't have to do it. And I mean, I admit, like, I frequently did not do my readings in undergrad when I didn't need to because there was just no point in it. Work smarter, not harder. But in law school, you have so much reading. So even if you don't want to do your school readings, which I think is, you know, your own prerogative, like start reading for fun or something. Like start just kind of like clocking in some page work and like reading, even like just reading news, reading like any kind of book you want, because the more you're reading, like the easier it's going to come when you have to like sit down and like look at a textbook and just read all afternoon. And those are probably the two main things, the reading one especially.
That's something I feel like I personally need to work on also. I do as much reading is needed for the class, and then I just move on because we should work smarter, not harder. But now with this advice, I'm definitely going to take time to try to digest the readings and do a lot more leisure reading. Kind of on the same path, what has been your favorite law school course thus far and why?
So there's definitely like the classes are fun for different reasons. And obviously, like all the professors have different teaching styles. And so like, you adjust to that. But I like, there's a class called torts, which is like kind of like, it's like accidental injuries, like battery, stuff like that. But it's mainly like the civil side, I would say, of like criminal law. It's like a sister study. And there's some like weird cases in that class. So that probably was like the most entertaining, because when you're like, like falling asleep over your book because like you're just reading like it's just textbook, and then it'll be a case, you'll get like a really like weird case where like someone falls and then gets caught in a power line, and it kind of like wakes you back up. And that like, and as much as it's like bad to find entertainment in like these people's like injuries, it really makes you like remember everything. Like you'll be in the exam and you won't even have to think like, oh, what was that case name, because you'll be like, I remember someone got electrocuted. And then, but my favorite class was probably civil procedure, which I don't think is a lot of people's favorites because it's not as like interesting, but it's basically just like how the courts work on the civil side of things. And I liked it because it was all rules. Like as long as you knew the rules, like you were fine. And so I liked that approach because it wasn't like a lot of courses go into like policy theory and everything. And I was like, no, like the rules, like I know the rules, like I know I'll get a point because I named the rule. So it was just kind of like a breath of fresh air. And it was like almost like math, the way that math is easy when you come from like doing like a bunch of like reading. It's kind of feels like that, but there's no math involved. It's just a rule book.
I think going to law school after an undergraduate, we don't want to study politics and that stuff. We want to study like rules and law.
Definitely.
Our next question is, what's your typical day look like at USC Law?
So I think like within the first like you know, the beginning of the semester, you start to get into the swing of things. And I think it's really important to like kind of like check in with yourself and be like, am I a morning person or a night person? And I personally am like a 9 to 5 person. Like I don't want any end of the spectrum. Like I want to get all my work done during the day and then just like relax at night. And I also don't want to wake up too early. So I typically wake up like right before I have to leave, like right, like, and then I give myself a lot, like I have time to get to the school, like get to class, get all my stuff out and everything, but I sleep in as much as possible because I'm like not a super early morning person. And you also don't get to pick your like class time at USC. So I've had like 8 a.m.s and you know, it's fine. But and then we have I go to class typically like in the morning, like, and I wake up before like whatever time it is, like whether it's 8 or 11, like I'm cutting close and going right before. And then the nice thing about USC is we have like a mandated lunch break. So there's no classes, no anything from 12 to 2 every day. So like say my first class is at 11, like it's over by 11:50. And then I know I have a 2-hour chunk of time where I can do anything I need to. So sometimes like if you join organizations on campus, all of them typically hold their meetings at lunch because it's just the time where like no matter what, like any year, like first year, second year, third year, like everyone's going to be available. And so sometimes I'll have meetings at the time, but normally I like to go to the library and I like to get like a solid chunk of work done during lunch, even though like, and it's also a treat too, because if you're not in the mood, then you're like, oh, I get lunch off. But like, it's just so good to kind of like stay in that class mindset and check something off the to-do list, because then like, even if a reading takes 2 hours, like you're done with that reading and you know, like, okay, when I get home, I only have like one more reading to do and then I can call it a night. And then you typically have afternoon classes. I've been fortunate enough where I haven't had anything later than like 3, with the exception of like one elective course that was like not a full semester long. So you really like, it's nice because they try to give you like, you normally have like your whole night off. And like, even if you want to call it quits by like 7, like that's a solid chunk of time to get your work done. And so, yeah, I typically like, I like to do my work. Like I have like a internal schedule. I do all my readings for my classes 2 days in advance. So if I have the class on Monday, I'm doing the reading on Saturday. I guess, yeah, that's kind of 2 days in advance. And then because if you say like you're having a really hard day, like, and you can't get anything done, you always have the buffer. And if you procrastinate, you can always push it to the next day. And that's just kind of my like productive procrastination. And then you go into the weekend and you have like so much more time because your work's basically already done by Wednesday for Friday. And then the schedule just like, it really works for me. But so I plan everything out. I have all my stuff recorded in my planner. And then I keep like, you know, the sticky notes on Mac. I'm very, very hyper scheduling, and then I schedule my day like by the hour. So like, I know like what time I'm waking up, like I know what time I'm doing each of my readings. And then as I do something, I just check it off the list. And then, I mean, sometimes you're like, normally it's like 2 classes a day, 3 classes a day, but one of them will be like legal writing, which is like a class that you take, but there's not a lot of work for it beforehand. It's like, you just have big assignments. So typically you'll have like 2 sets of readings to do a day if you're kind of like keeping on the schedule. So I like to do one at lunch, one right when I get home at 3. I'm calling it quits by like 5 or 6. And I just like read a book or I watch Netflix or I literally lay there doing nothing. And by 6 o'clock, and then I stay up, like I have like 6 hours and I go to sleep at midnight and then I'm waking up the next day doing it all again. And it's like, I don't know, it has to work for you. Like I'm not the kind of person who can work until they go to sleep at night. It's just not for me. And I don't think like that's a healthy way to do anything. But yeah, that's like a typical day. More free time than work time is what I always like to do.
I really like that advice, especially like me. I also don't like working until late at night just because I don't think my brain functions like that. Like I retain a lot more information early on in the day, and then towards the end, I start losing my attention span. So then I just watch Netflix also. So I can completely relate on that aspect. And it's very reassuring that eventually when I do go to law school, that that aspect of my life doesn't have to like leave. It's just about making time to focus on self-care. And that's something that even us right now in undergrad, we can focus on and try to do and make time for. But with that being said, these were kind of our questions. We did have people submit questions to us privately. And for anyone in the audience who still wants to submit questions, feel free to use the chat feature and let us know what you want us to ask Maura. But some questions that we did get, the first one being, since you self-studied for the LSAT, what was your study plan?
So it's like, I would say the hardest thing is getting started. And then also like, I like when I've never known anyone who's gone to law school, like no one in my family has. So I was really like figuring it out along the way. And I like LSAT tutors and everything can be like insanely expensive. So that was my plan for self-studying. So I would say like start off, like ask people who you know, like people who you know who have gone to law school, like what books they recommend, and then order the books. And then if you try to just like I got, I think it was like the LSAT trainer, and then I did some power score. And then also I believe it's Khan Academy has a free website, and they make the schedule for you and they schedule your practice tests for you. So that's like a good kind of guide to be like, if I want to hit this score in so many months, like they say I should do this. But if you kind of just start reading, and then at the beginning, like space your practice tests out, because you might not improve as quickly as you think you're going to. And it can be really like, kind of just like you're like, oh, like I'm making no strides. So work your way through the books. And then as you take practice tests, focus on the areas that you really need to make major improvement in. Like logic games, I think is the easiest area to improve, because not a lot of people have done it in the past. And once you get it, you get it. And then you can do it on any exam, unless the problem is like super hard and you make a mistake in the rules. But that's like the easiest area to improve. So if you focus on that, then your test, then you know for a fact, like next practice test, your score is going to increase. So I think start off slow with the tests, and kind of just work your way through the material and learn stuff. And also if the book's not clicking, like pull up a YouTube video, like there's endless resources out there for self-studying. And then you're going to hit a point a couple months before, like I started around like 3 months and then gradually like increased, where you want to start like pounding out practice tests. And you want to like, because timing can be a huge issue for people. It was a big issue for me, especially on reading comprehension. Like I took longer than I needed. So once you kind of are feeling confident about the material, it's good to just like practice test. And then I know blind review is really helpful for some people, where you go back and you look kind of at like where you could have improved. The most crucial part of taking the test is reviewing it, because you want to learn from your mistakes, and then also like you're getting the timing down. So as I was approaching the exam, I was taking at one point like a practice test a day, but that was like a little too much. And I think I had procrastinated, like I took a couple weeks off for like a vacation or something, and then I really needed to catch up. So you can do like one every 2 days as you're approaching the exam, and then you want to like stop and cut off, and just like, it's the way that like people don't like run right before a marathon. Like you want to give yourself rest and kind of just like review the material. So that was like the schedule that I kind of took in place. But you like the practice tests are probably going to be the most helpful element of studying. And there's like a lot of resources out there where you can get free tests. I know Khan Academy gives you 10. And then like I had Power Score website, because I was taking the Flex, and it was like, so there wasn't a lot of tests out there, but they had Flex exams. So I ended up, and they have like 80 or something, they have a crazy amount. So I ended up kind of just going through that. And then you make your own schedule too, because if a panic hits you, then you're like, then you know what to do. Like you're kind of like going in blind. And then as your date approaches, you're like, I'm not doing well in this area. And you know yourself. So then you'll be like like, no, it's like we're doing this every single day and we're practicing like reading comprehension until I get it down. So I think like, yeah, just start off with the material and increase with tests would be my advice.
I think especially right now, there's a lot of resources which really help with self-studying. So I know we kind of touched on this topic, but we have a question which asks, is it really possible to balance your personal life with the rigorous workload of law school?
Yeah, I mean, my personal life, again, like I said before, like I like relaxing. Like I'm very introverted, so like it's almost as much fun as me to like stay in and give myself like time off alone as it is to like catch up with like friends. So like you have enough time to do whatever you want. Like the people, your classmates, which it's inevitably going to happen, your classmates that are working nonstop and are acting like they don't have enough time for anything are lying. Like they're not telling the truth. Like I don't know what they're doing, but like there's time. And if they're working nonstop, like they're just going to burn out. Like halfway through the semester, and it's going to be hard. And like a lot of people like love that stress, but it's like that's not a help. Like you're not going to be happy if you're working nonstop and reading cases all the time. Like it's just not sustainable. So there definitely is a balance, and most law schools have social events called bar reviews, so which is like really cute. So our student like bar association, which is basically like student government, they pick a bar in LA, which I think is like very cool. And it's like sometimes it's reserved for all the students, sometimes it's not, and it's just like open to the public, but they like everyone from USC gets in basically. And then the whole class is there and it's super fun, and like that's kind of a fun time too, because like people like don't talk about law school, and sometimes like inevitably it's going to happen. But in that case, like it's also good to like keep friends that are not in law school and to talk to your family members. Like I call my mom like all the time, and like mainly I'm screaming about school, but like it's good to talk to someone who like doesn't know it. So I would say that like it's totally easy to have a personal life. Like I probably like go out and do something once a weekend, and that's by like choice. Like I probably could do more, but I give myself off like a full 24 hours every single week.
I think that's really good advice because a full 24 hours is like how you can regain energy and prevent burnout from occurring. Kind of along the school aspect, somebody asked if cold calling really occurs in law school and if it's as scary as it is on television.
I can't believe I didn't even like talk about this so far. No, it's not scary. I mean, yeah, like it's gonna be scary when you get there, like on your first day and you're waiting for someone to be cold called. But a lot of professors won't even cold call on the first day, or at least that was how my professors were. They know like nerves are high already. Like no one has been in law school. But like basically, like if you do the reading, you can get an answer out. And if you can't get an answer out, like the professor's not going to hold it against you, because when he looks to someone else, like probably only a few hands are going to go up. So it's never like the situation where like you get called on and the question like you couldn't possibly answer. Normally the hard questions or like the more in-depth questions about the material is going to be on a volunteer basis, and the cold calls are going to be for like the facts of the case. So they'll like randomly call on you in class, and then they'll be like, tell me the facts of the case. And you're just giving the background. You're like, well, there was this guy and then this situation. And that's easy because then you just have to read. So all of a sudden, like the points are there. And also most classes participation doesn't count. So who cares if you mess up your cold call? Like the professor's not going to remember. Like they probably don't care. Like maybe they'd be like, oh, they really screwed up that cold call, but the grading's blind. So even if they do remember and they do hate you for it and hold it against you for the rest of their life, it cannot impact you in the slightest. So like ultimately it's like cold calling's not a big deal, and if you're fortunate enough, you're going to be in a really supportive class, and like I am right now, and if someone crushes their cold call, a ton of people are there to praise them. And if for some reason the cold call goes wrong, there's people telling you you did great anyways, even when you know you didn't. So like that's the best case situation, and I've only been cold called on like twice. there's so many people in your class, like statistically the chance it's going to be you, and normally it's like you get called on once a semester, so it's not as bad. It just sounds scary.
It is really great to know that cold calling is not as nerve-wracking as someone like me in undergrad imagines it. So moving on, we know that a grading system is really different in law school than in undergrad school. We have a question asking, are your grades based on assignments or just exams?
So it depends on the class. Like I said before, you have, at least at USC, which I think most schools are required to, you have a legal writing course, and then we have like a part of it that's like legal research as well. So that class is graded on assignment basis, and then we have like writing assignments. And then we had like a research project. So those were just assignments, no exams. In the class, that course ended 4 months before not 4 months, 4 weeks before the other classes. So we could study for finals. They're very considerate with their scheduling, I have to say. But then your other classes, I would say 99% of the time, your only grade is your exam, which again, great for like the blind grading in case you're worried about like your professor hating you or something, which is never going to happen anyways. But if it's in your head, so most of the time it's your exam. I know that there's some cases where like they factor other things in, and the professors do have the discretion to like bump you up or bump you down by 0.1 points after like the blind grading occurs. So, which is good because like say for example, you bombed your exam, but your professor, like you have like ungraded assignments, like practice exams during the year that he is like reading over and giving you tips on, knows you can do better, then there's a chance he can bump your grade up. And then say you never come to class, you haven't done any of the like ungraded mandatory work, that's what it basically is, then the professor can like kind of bump you down. But it's never going to be for like, it has to be for something like egregious. Like it's never going to be for like messing up a cold call. Like I didn't even think about my exams, my grade being changed. Like all you think about is like everything is like this exam, which I don't necessarily think that's a positive thing either. But at least like there's so much work throughout the semester that you know, like, and you have like a really good chunk of time to study and prepare for it.
Kind of going off of that, since you mentioned that GPA is very important for us here in undergrad, how important is like your GPA when you go to law school? I know some law schools don't even do grades. Like Berkeley, they don't have a GPA. I think it's like pass, no pass. They have a system like that. So how is that system at USC, and how important is your GPA for law school?
So I'm still trying to like figure that out because some people say some things and some people say others. But so basically like it's going to be graded on a curve, and there's a preset median at a 3.4. So half the class is going to be above a 3.4, half the class is going to be below a 3.4, which sounds kind of low, probably because like everyone in your class is obviously going to be like high achieving and everything. So like that being like the base GPA is kind of weird. But then there's some schools where the median is like even set at like a 2.8 or something like that, like a true median. So like 3.4 is a gold mine. But it's so you kind of have to like, if you're used to like getting A's in every class, which I think like obviously we're all very smart women, we are. It's a little disturbing like at first because you're like, everyone here gets A's, like how could I get an A? But like ultimately like I didn't get a 4.0, but like if you're happy with like, and you feel like, I mean, I think the best way is like walk out of your exam and be like, that could be anything. Like I just threw that together, because you have like 3 hours. You're like, I just threw that out together. Like, I don't know what I'm going to get, and I wouldn't be surprised, because then no matter where you come out, you're like, who would have known? I would have known. But so it's, and then a 3.4 is good too. Like you want to be like, no matter where you fall, you're probably going to get a job. Like if you look at the and that's what matters. Like when you look at the employment statistics, like there's a couple people who don't get jobs after graduation, like I think like 5 or something, and you don't even know if they looked for jobs. Like you don't know if they wanted to work. Like we don't know these people. But so no matter, and then there's people below the median and they're getting jobs as well. So I think like if if you want to go big law, there's going to be a lot of pressure around GPA, and there's some firms that have GPA cutoffs, but the cutoffs are normally like the one that I saw was like a 3.66, which is really good. But like, it's not like not attainable. So I think that like it matters, but then it also doesn't. Like if your goal is to go to law school and get a job that's going to pay you money to do the law, like you're fine. Like you're fine, like network a little extra, nothing's gonna matter. But like if you have your like sight set on like getting like a really good federal clerkship, like in like the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, obviously you're gonna need a higher GPA. If you want to work at like the most prestigious big law job, then you're gonna need a high GPA. But then there's a lot of people who who are below the median, but then they kill the interview and they get the job anyways. So there's always exceptions. I would say that like, I'm less stressed with my GPA now than I was in undergrad, weirdly enough.
So we have another question asking, how did you decide you wanted to attend USC when picking law schools?
Definitely. So I'm originally from Rhode Island. So I'm from the Northeast, and I didn't want to stay in the Northeast. I was like, oh, well, I have 3 years to go to school. I had no idea where I wanted to practice. Like, honestly, even now to this day, a job's a job. I don't care where in the United States I am. So I was like, oh, well, I might as well just apply all over the place and see what happens. And then like, I wanted to be in a city or something like that, like in a populated area, because I went to school in the middle of nowhere. So I just kind of applied broadly, and I applied to different regions. And then ultimately USC was like my top choice because I loved the idea of moving to California and being on a different coast for even a couple of years if I didn't decide to stay. The scholarships are not too shabby if you're thinking about applying. They're very generous. And then also like LA is such a large legal market with the alumni connections, like it's kind of just like a score because there's alumni everywhere, and it's not like there's any shortage of jobs.
Well, thank you for that. And I think that that's really reassuring for all of us that are thinking of continuing to stay in California, that it is attainable to go to USC Law and that there's a lot of job prospects here for us. And with that being said, our last question for today is, what is any like last piece of wisdom that you would like to share with our members today?
That's tough. I feel like I've rambled about so much. I would say like, I don't know, I was stressed like my whole life because I wanted to go to law school, and like all I would think about is like getting into law school, getting like everything was for law school. And now I'm here and I'm kind of just like, I feel like I would have got here anyways. I'm happy like the stress benefited, but it only does so much. Like I was like out of my mind about the LSAT exam. Like it drove me crazy. I was so disappointed like that I couldn't get a 180. Like I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why am I not getting 100? I've studied so much, but like it's impossible. Like test taking is test taking. Like no matter what score you're gonna get, like obviously work to do higher, but like it's just like it's not the end of the world. And I really thought it was the end of the world. Like I remember sobbing after I retook the LSAT, and I was like crying to my mom, and I was like, I'm gonna get no money from schools and I'm not gonna be able to go to law school. Like that was my fear, because when you're applying, like GPA and LSAT are like the only two words that you think of. But like really the stress wasn't worth it, because like you're gonna have options. Like it's probably not gonna be the case that you don't get in anywhere. Like it's not going to happen. And I think like now I look back and all the stress seems so silly and so dumb. And like kind of that I was like holding myself to like an unrealistic standard and just like being so negative about everything, when like if I just like stopped thinking about it the second all my applications were in, or stopped thinking about it the second I got my LSAT score, and stopped like festering on things, I would have been so much happier, and like the same results would have come. So, and also like try not to talk to too many people about it. Like, I think it's beneficial, but if you have friends that are also applying to law school, like it like can consume your life in the same way that law school can. So kind of just like talk about it when you need to, find someone to study with. Like if you need to vent, you need to vent. And it's always better to vent with someone who's going through the same thing as you, but don't let it like, don't be on Reddit like nonstop. Like I definitely did that. And then by the time you get to law school, like your goal is achieved, but like you're tired and you're crossing the gates, like kind of like panting because you didn't think you were going to get there, but it's really like not the end of the world. And all that matters is you get a job. Like law school seems like the goal, but once you get to law school, you're like, I just need a job. Like that's what I'm here for. And that's very like, that's kind of like relieving. Cause like, I don't know, like a job seems easier than like an admissions office.
I think that's something that I'm personally also trying to work on, not letting the idea of getting into law school consume me. And I think that that's something that a lot of us could resonate with, and something that we should focus on is like experiencing the journey of getting there rather than being so fixated on just like getting to the destination. Because something that I got out of this interview with you is that we're going to make it. Like we just have to have faith in ourselves and I guess trust the process. So that's something that I'm very grateful for. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us. I know it's going to help a lot of people and people that also watch this recording. So thank you so much again.
Of course. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to see so many women going into law. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys, the majority of my class is women. Like I was going to mention it earlier. I think like 67% or something. Like it's crazy high. There's no men. Like we're killing it.
Wait,
So
that's very exciting.
it's so exciting.
Well, that brings and gives us a lot of hope, especially for all of our members. But that's all we have for today. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact us or watch this recording. We will be posting it soon. But yes, thank you guys all for coming today.
Thank you guys.